So that's black magic. It's magicians working with jinns, and sometimes they think these jinns work for them, and the jinns tell them to do like nasty stuff, because basically they want them to do things that go against God. But basically, so you serving them, but you think they're serving you. And once you've taken refuge from a jinn, you don't have the protection from God anymore. And some people just end up later dying of, certain illnesses because, you've taken the jinn as your protector. And you're gonna pay a price for that. So that's black magic. It's just jinns doing what they naturally do in their world that you can't perceive. And then the jinns can whisper in your heart so that you perceive something, so that it's an illusion basically. You perceive it as this, but it's not that. So they can make you believe something really wonderful, Even some of the what God says in the Quran that, even if the prophet was to basically let the prophet ascend into the heavens and the people saw, some of them would say this is magic, And that's the thing about miracles. It's not like everybody's going to believe once a miracle comes. Some people test God. They're like, if you give me this, I'll start praying, I'll believe. But that's not how faith works. That's you seeking selfishness and testing God. And we do not test God. God tests us. But a miracle, basically, when it comes, based on what's in your heart, God can allow you to believe due to that miracle, and it can allow the other person to be led astray due to that miracle. So the same miracle can have different effects on different people. But basically, a miracle is not a bigger type of magic. All right. So when these magicians they brought their ropes, and the people perceived it as snakes, because it's not really snakes. Because they've played, the jinns have messed with your mind, and they've messed with the things so that they move, and you perceive it as a snake, and you're fearful. The Quran says even Moses was a little bit apprehensive.
قالوا يا موسى إما أن تلقي وإما أن نكون أول من ألقى قال بل ألقوا إذا حبالهم وعصيهم يخيل إليه من سحرهم أنها تسعى فأوجس في نفسه خيفة موسى قلنا لا تخف إنك أنت الأعلى وألق ما في يمينك تلقف ما صنعوا إنما صنعوا كيد ساحر ولا يفلح الساحر حيث أتى فألقي السحرة سجدا قالوا آمنا برب هارون وموسى قال آمنتم له قبل أن آذن لكم إنه لكبيركم الذي علمكم السحر فلأقطعن أيديكم وأرجلكم من خلاف ولأصلبنكم في جذوع النخل ولتعلمن أينا أشد عذابا وأبقى قالوا لن نؤثرك على ما جاءنا من البينات والذي فطرنا فاقض ما أنت قاض إنما تقضي هذه الحياة الدنيا.
But then God inspired to him that you don't have anything to fear. You would be dominant. Then Moses dropped his staff. And at once, the Quran says it swallowed up their falsehood. Because this, I think, is a type of like an analogy. Once you see the truth, it's like your mind just becomes blown. Your eyes just become open. You immediately recognize the falsehood and the illusion of the falsehood. Because now your mind is open. It's like when you do a magic and then they show you the trick and you're like, oh, now I get it, So when the magicians were doing this and the jinns were helping them, it appeared to the people like this was actually, snakes moving. But once this stick, this lifeless object, God gave it life. You see how it becomes a real snake. And it's not magic, it's actually God working within the laws of nature. And God created the laws of nature so he can command them at any time. He can walk within those laws or out of those laws. Nobody questions God. And God is free from fear. God has fear of nothing, and he doesn't fear any consequences. So once they saw this real thing, they were immediately the magic became useless. It became useless because now the people don't believe in it. They're not gonna. So now the magic becomes useless and people can actually see it like, oh, this is what it is. And that's what the scriptures are for. Even the Buddhists talk about a strong mind. You know, it's about to teach you about God and knowing the ways of God. Because once you're on the path of truth, you cannot be deceived by the devils. So you see, sometimes people talk about an angel appeared to them, like Paul, the one who said he was people claim was an apostle, but he was never an apostle. He said an angel appeared to him in a bright light. Or people talk about Jesus appeared to them. And, so you see, well, did he appear like a French white man or a Semitic Jew? Because people have this image of Jesus that we know it's not actually Jesus. So if Jesus appeared to you, why did he take that form? Or they say Mary appeared to the people. So it's like, why do these people appear in the image you already have in your head? Because these are genes that fool these people, trick the mind, and it's only because the people have believed in falsehood. They've taken these people who are servants of God. God sent them as messengers. God sent them with his messages, and they prayed to God. They ate food. They died. Even if they claim to be resurrected, but but these are people who served God basically, and people have come to take them as saints, even though God sent no authority upon that. God didn't reveal to any prophet that so and so is a saint and you should pray to him and he can intercede for you. God didn't send any authority like that, But once you've believed in that falsehood and you start praying and saying things like Holy Mary, Mother of God, then basically you've sought the jinns, you've sought the devils. You're no longer in the protection of God. So now they can come to the weak-minded or the people who actually want, any sign, basically. They would want anything, So they've opened their mind up for anything. So they appear in the image you know. They don't appear in the true image. But this is only because the people have not followed the true path. Because once you have the true path, you have the protection of God, and the devils cannot influence you in that way. Now, another story is about Jesus. And Jesus, he came around the Jewish time when the people, it was medicine that was important at that time. Scholars were treating illnesses, and there were some illnesses that didn't have cure. And here was a man who God allowed to raise the dead. So not only could he cure people, but he could raise the dead. So you see, God gave him something that the people could be like, oh wow, this goes beyond. So it was good for that time. It was necessary for that time. It was important. And when God works these miracles, probably if you had knowledge, you could see how maybe, for example, somebody had cancer, and once the miracle was performed, those cells start dying, just like in radiation, but the person is not, gets ill because of the radiation. So it's not like something you can never explain. That's a miracle. God creates the laws of nature. Just because you can explain it doesn't mean it's not by God. And God teaches you technology. So the car that you made, God made it first, and then taught you how to make it, and taught you how to put the laws of physics together to make the car. That's another argument also for God, because anything that has laws and you can put it together and say, this is how this works, this is how this works, and this is why if you put it together it functions in this way, then you know that it was put together by somebody who knows. And another person who knows can bring it apart, or debug it if something is wrong with it and repair it. The same thing with the universe. It functions with a certain set of laws, and God has taught us how to detect these laws of nature, how to come up with formulas. So if it wasn't put together by somebody who had knowledge and who's wise, then it wouldn't function in that way, you know. Now, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of God be upon him, he was in the time where, in the place where the people prided themselves in recitations. They had magic, yes, and sorcery and all that, but they prided themselves in recitation. There were people who they can hear something once and they remember it and they recite it, and they prided themselves in poetry as well. So you would have rich people who would people would give recite poems for them on the impromptu, you know, and they would give them money and all that. But now God revealed this thing that it's not like poetry, you know, it's not poetry at all, and it's not, and it was in a culture where people could remember stuff. So you see, so God is wise, and God works in is has dominion over everything, and He works in mysterious ways, as they say. Now we live in an age where we pride ourselves in science and technology. If you believe, and Muslims don't talk about blind faith, you know, God says use your intellect. But today, not many people don't contemplate, you know. You follow, but you never really contemplate your life. You never contemplate your intentions and all that. So, you know, God gave us intellect, and He will be questioning us for that. It makes sense, you know. In a system of accountability, in a world, a universe of cause and effect, it makes sense that you should be held accountable for what God gave you. Because if God didn't give you intellect, then it wouldn't give you free will as well, you know. He wouldn't call you to account for that free will, whether you did righteousness or in right, or you were wicked, you know. And the universe is based on some duality, you know, and we, with our experiences and intellect, we prefer one of those dualities sometimes to the other one. We prefer truth to falsehood, you know. We prefer good to evil, you know. So there are certain things that make sense. Now we live in a world of technology and science, all right? So if the genes want to really fool us, they're not going to present some kind of magic or something that we would explain as supernatural. They're also going to evolve the way they attack us, you know. And once we start believing in them and we start taking refuge in them, just like the people took refuge in the genes, in black magic and all that, and sometimes they dwell in like these remote areas like deserts where there are not a lot of people or caves and all that, just like the people sought refuge in them, because sometimes these Arabs who didn't believe in God, they would go there and be like, they know a certain jinn lives there. They'll say, oh, I seek refuge in you, because they didn't want the jinn to hurt them and they wanted to protect them. But they didn't know that God is the protector. And you don't need to seek refuge in a jinn. You only seek refuge in God. That jinn would not do anything to you that God doesn't permit, you know. So we live in this age of technology, and the jinns, this is how they're going to attack us next. All right. This is the test for this generation before, I think, the end of times. Just like the other people had their test. The people of Moses, the people of Jesus, and the people of the Prophet Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon all of them. You know. So this is our age. Now, many people are gonna believe in extraterrestrials, you know. But like I said, we do not have any prophecies about aliens and extraterrestrials. But the prophet did tell us a prophecy about the Dajjal. And he said, every messenger, every prophet told his people about the Dajjal. And he said, but he would tell us one thing that the other prophets didn't tell their people. He said that he's one-eyed, you know. And he also gave us some more information about the Dajjal, the Antichrist, the one who people now call the Antichrist. And he said, he's going to have the genes, they're going to work for him. So they're going to work for him, and he's going to he's going to be doing miraculous things, and the people are going to be like, you know, this guy, he really is the Messiah. Then later, because the Messiah did miracles by God's permission, he's going to wake the dead. But in those acts, basically, the genes are going to take the form of those dead people. And you can say, well, how? Well, we can see it now. With science, all they need your DNA, and they can create some kind of a clone if they wish, right? We're reaching that stage. And with all the information that you have online, your dead parents, you have your information, and you don't anything you feel nowadays, you put it on Facebook. I feel this way when this happened, blah blah blah. So they know how you feel, they know how you react, they know how your parents look, they have the DNA of the dead. So the gene can take that form, and you would think he resurrected the dead. And so a lot of people are going to believe in him because of some of these miracles, because the genes are going to be working with him. So the prophet has told us that. Now, when you put that in perspective to the world we live in, and they tell you about some of these aliens, extraterrestrials that work with these people, these elites, and these governments, then you put two and two together and you realize it's these genes who are now presenting themselves as extraterrestrials and aliens because the scientific mind can accept that, you know. And then with time, the Dajjal can come, and he can come as the Messiah, and then later he would proclaim himself as God, blah blah blah. So even Bigfoot and his relationship with aliens, as they say, there is a story about one of the companions of the prophet, and he said they were traveling by sea, and they landed upon this island, and then this creature met with them. And from the description of the creature, how it had hair all over its body, so you couldn't tell, like, basically the back from the front, male from female, and all that. And basically, the creature led them to this place where a man was tied with his hands to his neck. And this man was asking them questions about the last messenger because he wanted to know if his time would come soon when he would be free. And actually, this man claimed to be the Dajjal, the lying Messiah, the Antichrist. So this creature's description, the hairy creature, seems to me like Bigfoot actually. And even though the Dajjal is not going to be a jinn, he's a human being, it's possible that, you know, maybe his consciousness, you know, like jinns can take somebody over. Maybe the human being becomes this Dajjal, or this jinn becomes, takes, works with this person, becomes this person basically because of the person's ego or his pride or his arrogance and all that. So, but we don't know the particular nature of this, but we believe he's a human being, the Dajjal himself. So it's not a very unheard of thing to say like the Dajjal or the genes and the Bigfoot, or even the Bigfoot might be a jinn himself. But to say that Bigfoot and aliens have a relationship, you know. So Islam has given us so much information, and the Prophet has given us so many prophecies, so that we do not get deceived when the time comes. But so that's the thing. But what I'm, amazed by is the fact that when you watch shows like Ancient Aliens, people are so willing to believe in several gods. They're so willing to believe extraterrestrials created them. Like this, it amazes them. I look at these people sometimes, and I'm just amazed. Like I'm speechless. Like I don't know the words to use. I'm just amazed. You know, they so want to believe not just that extraterrestrial exists, but that they're like our ancestors. They're like gods. And God had sent angels before, and they are genes, yeah. And like I said, the genes had ways they could get to some of the heavens before, and maybe even now because the prophet is not reciting revelations anymore. So maybe they still can do that now, or maybe it stopped altogether after the prophets started reciting. We don't know that, but we know it stopped during the time of the prophet's time when he became the prophet and he started reciting the revelations. So we know, yes, there is possibility of portals on earth. Even some teachings tell you that some of the rivers of heaven, they have like the equivalent on earth, or they flow on earth as well. So it's not supposed to be taken literally, but basically you can have the sense that some things in heaven have similarities on earth. Even the Kaaba, which was the first house built by the prophet Adam, and then later God showed him by the meteor or something that will become the black stone, where the house should be built. And then Abraham rebuilt the house and, started calling people to the pilgrimage. So that house has its equivalent as well in heaven. So, there are certain things and there are certain doorways and there are certain portals, so to speak, And with time, God might show us how to create even our own portals. But here's the thing: God is all seeing and God is the source. So you can't say God has a father, God has a mother. He's the first. He created time. So it was so God is not within time. He created space and time. You can't say what was before God because there was no before. There's no after God. He created time itself. Time is only a perception, a creation of God. We can understand matter as a creation, but it's hard to understand time as a creation. You know. So these genes, they might exist in our world, in our realm, but maybe some sort of a different gravitational or magnetic field. There's going to be some differences that maybe with technology they're going to be able to interact in our world, and they're going to be able to take certain forms because, and also because the people have believed in them and taken sought refuge in them. But you see, the fact is like they're already preparing for this antichrist, this Dajjal, by just believing in so many ridiculous things. Because why is it easier for people to believe in several gods or to believe aliens created them than to believe in the one God? Which is better? Like I said, there are some dualities: good, evil, truth, falsehood. Which is better, a single God or multiple gods? And they will tell you even these aliens or extraterrestrials, they fought each other and all that. So obviously you can't have two gods who agree so much so that they are equal, because if they're equal then they both should have existed. Not the one shouldn't occur before the other one. But we know that God is the source and he gave everything its power, he gave everything its knowledge. So you can't encompass knowledge without God allowing it. So whatever knowledge you have gained on the earth is because God has allowed it, and he has prolonged for you basically, so that maybe you think you can cause failure to God, but you can't. God is free from harm. You can't harm God, and he's not afraid of that. So they talk about the what is it, the building of Babel, and they talk about God was surprised, like these people can reach the heavens. It's like so ridiculous. Like even some of the priests get into this. Like God was there the whole time. He gave the people the knowledge. He made prolonged for them the delusion, until he saw that they're not going to be a guided people, and he caused what he did to them. So it's not like God is going to be taken by surprise, or you're going to achieve some knowledge that God doesn't know about. God says in the Quran, he knows the previous generation and he knows the future generations. So God knows everything that's going to happen until the end. He's not surprised by some foolish people doing some foolish things. That's just mankind's notion and thinking he can go outside the bounds of God. You can't escape the grasp of God. Where are you going to go? The universe is all within his grasp, you know. But it just basically amazes me that people are willing to believe in several gods than one God, and several gods doesn't even make sense, you know. Who's this? The one single God makes the most sense because who's the most powerful? If one is more powerful than the other, then that other one is not as great a God. If one is not as knowing as the other, that one is not as great a God. If a God has to lose his eye to gain knowledge, then how ridiculous is that? That's a God, like with weaknesses and all that. He would probably fall ill and die. That's a God. God is ever living who doesn't die. I can go on a lot about the attributes of God, and by learning the attributes of God, then you can really, it's like when you see the truth, then the falsehood just becomes ridiculous. Just like with Moses and the magicians. So once you learn the attributes of God, this is why I'm confident in Islam. Because once you learn the attributes of God, then you realize that this is the truth. The falsehood just becomes ridiculous now. But that's another talk about God, which hopefully I will do soon, and hopefully people listen to it with an open mind, and open their hearts and seek God's guidance. But basically, this is what I wanted to get to, and let people know that the genes are gonna deceive us. The devils of the genes are gonna try to deceive us. And we already have prophecies of the Dajjal and the jinns that are going to be working with him. So be aware of this and don't let these people fool you with how amazed they are of their several gods or ancient ancestors and ancient aliens. Uh, Good luck in your path, in your seeking truth and seeking knowledge. Uh, God guide us, yeah? All right, people. Cheers.